Cop City, formerly known as the Institute for Social Justice and Public Safety Training, lol. This is outside of Atlanta. It is, as we will learn, on the edge of the Weelaunee Forest, and it's going to be used for military-grade training facilities, a mock city to practice urban warfare, dozens of shooting ranges, and a Black Hawk helicopter landing pad. Yay, yay, yay. Can we just get fucking healthcare? But there is a Stop Cop City movement, and one of their members, Manuel Trespass, was shot and killed a couple weeks ago, shot 13 times, according to a recent autopsy. Here to talk about that with us is organizer, policy advocate, and writer from Atlanta, Micah Johnson. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope I sort of summarized that correctly. And I am really, really devastated and sorry to hear about the murder of your comrade.
Yeah.
And can you tell me about Manuel, and tell me about what you know of his killing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being
here. So essentially, Manuel, who went by Tortuguita and actually used they, them pronouns, they were a forest defender. They had been, I didn't know them personally, but they had been living in the forest, the Weelaunee Forest, that Atlanta is trying to turn into this massive police training center for some time. And essentially, as the forest defense has gone on, the police have upped their raids and have been raiding the forest over the past couple months, charging people with domestic terrorism for things like, sitting in trees, criminal trespass, being a known member of an abolitionist movement. And eventually with eventually
that's a crime now. Yeah.
Right. So everyone watch out. And, with their most recent raid on January 18th, that is when they went in and they assassinated Tortuguita. A lot of the details are unclear. They had no body cameras on, despite being, in 2023. And, they've tried to release some stuff very partially that, tries to paint Tortuguita in a bad light. And of course, I think everybody knows that we'll never know exactly what happened. But this is somebody who had a pretty firm commitment to nonviolent struggle and nonviolent resistance. And, of course, anytime police kill people, then they try to, make them this scary domestic terrorist or criminal, after.
So, Micah, I was reading just like that they're trying to allege that Tortuguita shot or had a gun or something like this, which is, I just want to say, completely not an excuse to murder them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's hard to say, did they have a gun? Did they not have a gun? I don't really care. And I think a lot of people don't care.
Yeah.
And, because exactly, like, they marched in there with an army of police officers and they were ready to kill somebody, and they did. And, that's the story at the end of the day.
Tell me about the forest, Weelaunee Forest, and like the Defend Atlanta Forest, which is the same thing as Stop Cop City. Is that the same movement?
Yeah. So the movement is super broad and decentralized. There's not like one main organization or leader who's in charge. It's really, everyone is encouraged to, plug in and get involved however you see fit. There's people, all over the world who are organizing around this. This is forest land outside of Atlanta city limits, but it's owned by the city of Atlanta. And it's really crucial land in terms of, climate change and, just in, having a livable future. This is land that's been referred to as one of the 4 lungs of Atlanta. So it's really crucial for, keeping temperatures down, preventing flooding. There's all these various species that live there. So it's this really like important treasure of land that in 2021, the Atlanta City Council decided to lease for 50 years for $10 a year to the Atlanta Police Foundation, which is this super shady nonprofit that, has all of these corporate donors, all these corporate backers, and their plan is to destroy this forest land and turn it into Cop City.
$90 million is
$90 million
projected. Of course, that's you can only imagine it will be more than that.
Right.
So that's they just decided that. I wanted to mention, it seems like they skipped a few steps and there was supposed to be a public comment period to listen to the Atlantans and get their thoughts on whether they wanted to do this. And the mayor didn't, or city council didn't. Any updates you can give us?
Yeah, so like as soon as this plan went public, like Atlanta residents were against it immediately. The organizing started, and people were doing all of the things that you do, in a movement against something. And on the day of the final vote, their meeting lasted 2 days because there were 17 hours of public comment where Atlanta residents were calling in and saying, "We don't want this thing. Like nobody like." First of all, we want the forest. Second of all, this is 1 year after the 2020 uprisings, and the demand was to defund and abolish the police, not to literally create a $90 million playground for them.
Yeah.
And so, people were really firmly against it. They tried to do, they had these community listening sessions that were on Zoom where they turned off comments and weren't taking any questions. And, that was like their community input process. It's just been a total sham from the start. And their sort of shift since then has been to say, oh, everyone who's, talking about Cop City is just an outside agitator. It's just, people coming from outside of Atlanta. Actually, everyone in Atlanta wants this, even though, that's just obviously false.
Yeah.
Isn't it also like one of the biggest green spaces in a predominantly Black neighborhood in Atlanta? Like that's another angle here, that it's like one of the only green spaces in a Black neighborhood.
Yeah. This is in a majority Black area of Atlanta. It's in DeKalb County. And, obviously environmental racism is, such an important topic. And yeah, so the fact that, they're going to, this not as wealthy Black part of town to destroy green space and create this thing, instead of going to like Northeast Atlanta, which is super white and super wealthy. And those are the people who actually, supported Cop City. Like, that's of course where they're going.
Yeah. I also heard, I'm curious, I talked to like one or two organizers who were down there when we were talking about doing a story a while back, but they were mentioning something about the other half of the space, which is supposed to be like a production studio for like propaganda films or something to like improve police morale. I find that I wanted to do a story on that for a while, but I'm so curious if you could speak to that. It's like bizarro world to me. Yeah.
Yes, it's an utter shit show, and it's it's a little bit, there's a lot of details. Basically, there's this forest that is in this area. Part of the land is owned by the city, and that's what they're trying to destroy and create Cop City with. The other part of this land is currently public parkland that is owned by DeKalb County, and there's trails, people walk there. It's beautiful, this incredible nature zone. And right now, DeKalb County, who owns that land, is trying to do a land swap with this developer named Ryan Millsap. And his original plan was to take that land and create a Hollywood soundstage on it. It doesn't look like that's what's going to happen anymore. I think he's just going to develop it and put, some, gross high-rise apartments, or just something like that will of course be completely unaffordable. Who knows what he's doing, but yes, it's like these two plots of connected land. DeKalb is trying to let a developer destroy part of it, and Atlanta is trying to let the Atlanta Police Foundation destroy the other part of it. It's just and these are all Democrats, the party of science, right?
I mean, it would be please leave it to them. They care. It would be an abomination if it were just condos that were being developed, right? Like it would be a problem if you were filling that green space with those high rises anyway, just in so far as the housing crisis, gentrification and whatnot. But to do this, and it's like, I love that it's like, oh no, but it's going to be about like invading foreign countries because it's like urban warfare or a Black Hawk helicopter landing pad, like there something like this exists in, I believe, New Mexico, where it's like, oh, this is a mock Kabul, and you're like, or Nevada, where it's like, we just anyway, where they practice doing occupation right. And that's the way this is going to be. I mean, as if we needed, again, we're in a time of, oh my God, we don't need more police training. Oh my God, it's not about having a fucking playground to act out your violence. Can we just go back to Tortuguita though? What do you know of what's being done now? What are people calling for? And do you know how long they were living in the forest? That's like a lot of questions, but
yeah, I'm not sure how long they were living in the forest. I think it was quite some time, but I'm not sure. In terms of what people are calling for, so it wasn't just one police force that killed them. It was this joint task force that had Atlanta Police Department, DeKalb Police Department, the Georgia State Patrol, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. Like literally all of these police agencies are part of this thing, including the GBI. And go figure, the GBI is the one who is investigating the shooting. And, they've been all over Twitter, like responding to people being like, this shooting was justified. And it's like, okay, so you're part of the task force that did it. You're already saying it's justified, and you're also investigating it. And so
Georgia Bureau of Investigation, is that what GBI is?
Yeah.
GBI, okay. Our little state FBI.
Yeah, cute.
Right. And so, one of the demands is essentially in a totally independent investigation of what happened, and really the turning over of all evidence to the lawyers for Tortuguita's family. They held a press conference actually yesterday and discussed some of the results of the second autopsy that they had completed, which again showed that Tort had been shot 13 times. And so, yeah, there's a demand to, turn over all evidence. And then, more broadly, of course, to drop the domestic terrorism charges against the protesters. I believe there have been 19 people charged with domestic terrorism. And then also,
yes,
to stop Cop City, in honor of what Tort was fighting for.
I mean, it's the same thing that happens around the world, and specifically in the rest of the Americas, right? Which is environmental activists are always the first ones who are murdered and forgotten about, right? You can, you can gun down, and usually it's for, exploitation of natural resources, whatnot. In this country, our resource is military weaponry and cops. So that's our resource that we will stop at nothing to build and create. And no matter what environmentalist is in the way. And so it's just like, you read about this and you're like, oh, okay, where did that happen? Did that happen in like Ecuador with like Berta Cáceres? Did it happen in Venezuela, Colombia? But when you see someone being shot 13 times in this country, yeah, this is what we do all over. So I'm like,
yeah,
it's very, very upsetting. And I also want to know, what else can you add, or how can we support the stopping Cop City? Do you think there's a chance, or is it already, like, what state is it at of being built?
Yeah, I think 100%. If anything, the movement is growing. I think that they thought back in September 2021 when they approved the legislation that was the end of it. And they wanted to start construction, that year or early 2022, and here we are, at the beginning of 2023, and nothing, it hasn't started yet. And so the movement's going strong. I think there are so many ways for people to get involved, whether you're in Atlanta or not. StopCopCitySolidarity.org is a great site to go, where there are people calling on all of the corporate funders of the project to pull out $60 million of private money going into the facility, and then $30 million of public money. And so, there's ways to contact the corporations. There's ways to contact the contractors who are working on the project. And they've already actually gotten 2 different contractors to pull out of it, basically saying like, look, the city council can pass this thing if they want, but you still need contractors to build it. And, we're going to pressure contractors to like not contribute to this devastating project. And so, yeah, there's tons of ways to get involved.
That's great. That's excellent. And I had one more question, and I'm blanking on what that was. But yeah, Kayla, any last thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would just, I had not even seen the news about the autopsy for Tortuguita, and I think that just underscores Francesca's point that the coverage of their killing has been it's gone really quiet since the GBI stepped in, and I think it's just horrific and more of the same. It's just very sad. Yeah.
And let me just oh, sorry. Yeah. Let me just say on that point, one of the reasons that especially the local coverage has been so bad is that so one of our main outlets here is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, or the AJC, and they are owned by this company called Cox Enterprises. And the CEO of Cox Enterprises is leading the fundraising campaign for $60 million for Cop City. And so our media is literally owned by the people who are trying to build Cop City. And it's just resulted in, such terrible local coverage. They never disclose it. And, then they'll add it later that they're owned by Cox Enterprises. So, the local media scene has just been really bleak.
I didn't know that either. Yeah,
no, that is a crucial point. And then the other crucial point is, this is like, you're talking about a Democratic mayor, correct?
Yep.
And it also doesn't fit into the narrative that the right likes to cover, right? It's not a Democratic city where the problems are, people pooping on the streets. It's like, no, a Democratic mayor is overseeing the gunning down of a protester. Like,
yes.
So
and has yet to acknowledge it in any way,
Right.
Like he put out a statement about Tyree Nichols, and it just, of course, rings so hollow for you to talk about police violence in another city while you are literally presiding over the murder of a person here by the police.
I remember what I wanted to do, which is show how much the movement is actually scaring the cops, because here's some of the weaponry. If you're listening, well, I'll describe it in a second. Here's what they're rolling out. Now, like, just watching that footage, and it is footage of like armored vehicles, looks like crowd control. But then you see bulldozers and machinery that is meant to remove forest and trees. And like, you got to say, my heart is hurting a little bit just after hearing about the forest, hearing how important it is. And then they're going to just strategically and methodically bulldoze it and fucking like, raise it.
Right.
And so, there you have it. It's just another kind of like Standing Rock, but like make it even more meta.
Right.
Because of what it is being built to do. But anyway, everybody go to, what was it? I have
StopCopCitySolidarity.org.
StopCopCitySolidarity.org. Micah Herskind, thank you so much for joining us. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do